Welcome to the show, Solane.
Thank you.
So I found you in a Facebook group. I was specifically looking for somebody in Amsterdam because I've always wanted to hear how recovery was out there. What
Cool.
is? Do you have a recovery date?
What do you mean?
Like a date that you started getting sober or clean?
So my official date is May 3rd. So recently, actually, but I've been working on it for like 2.5 years so now, basically. But like, yeah, since May 2022. But then I really started my last journey on May 3rd.
So what was going on May 2nd this year?
Huh?
What was happening May 2nd this year?
So I actually went into another program because I just had a hard time. Like I was getting, I was getting halfway there, but just not really, really getting through the final steps of getting fully sober. Just always getting to like the step of the door, but not fully going through the door. So I went into a program here in the Netherlands for a rehab facility, which is based on religion and everything. And that I finished successfully.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's actually I've been home for like 8 days now. It's not the easiest being back home because life is I've changed, but my surroundings haven't. But I still feel very confident I've got this. So I don't want to go back into the old lifestyle anymore. And I really feel like now I've got it under control. I have a good backup system. I still have like weekly check-ins and everything, so that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. What was your drug of choice?
Crack cocaine and the last period of life, like so over the years. So let's start with the beginning. So I
Yeah.
was born addicted. My mom was addicted to crack when I was born, basically. So, of course, well, in my youth, when growing up, I wasn't using any drugs until I was 12. Then I started smoking weed. I left home when I was 16.
Oh,
Uh,
so let's backtrack. So you're born in Amsterdam or born in where were you born?
Born in Rotterdam.
Rotterdam. Okay. Which is not far from Amsterdam.
No, that's like an hour away or something like that.
Now, when you start when you're 12, because I know there's like no drinking age out there. I've only been to Amsterdam once.
Yeah,
Is the is the weed as prevalent? Is it as normal in Rotterdam as it is in Amsterdam with like coffee shops all over?
it's a Dutch thing in general. Yeah. So you have coffee shops in all of the Netherlands,
Okay,
but
so it's not just in
it's a
Amsterdam.
yeah, it's a lot bigger in Amsterdam, but like in Rotterdam, you can find coffee shops in smaller cities. Maybe they're not as many, but there still are everywhere.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, that's coffee with a K because when you go to a coffee shop with a C, you're getting caffeine coffee. If you're going to a coffee shop with a K,
Well,
you're going. I had to
actually,
learn that when I was trying to seek out the right kind of coffee shops. I was in Amsterdam, 2016, so a little over 8 years ago. I was in Amsterdam. I went to first. We went to Berlin, and
okay.
then from Berlin we went to Ghent in Belgium,
Mm-hmm.
and I loved Ghent. It was such a cool city. And then we went to Amsterdam, and I had a blast in Amsterdam. That's for sure. I was
Well,
not sober.
so there's coffee with a K. That's just the Dutch way of saying coffee. And coffee, as in written in the English way, is just coffee as well. But they call it a coffee shop. There's a whole history lesson that I could give about it. But
I want to hear
it's
about it.
just like,
I do want to hear about it.
weed is not legalized, it's just condoned. There's a lot of rules about it, but it's actually never been legalized in the Netherlands. It's just condoned. And there's ways of having it, you can buy it and sell it, but then there's a lot of restrictions and laws about it. So, but actually, it never was really legalized. There's
Yeah, I
just,
know that you can't just walk down the street with a joint. It's not that legal.
No, but there's, they're very flexible about it, how much you have in your pocket or anything. But that's also with cocaine or stuff like that. Just only there's a big warfare on crack cocaine, for example. If you get caught with that, yeah, that's a big problem. And the same goes with crystal meth because like I transferred a lot from addiction to addiction. So I had a weed addiction, then I had a cocaine addiction, like snorting coke. I had a speed addiction, then I had a cocaine addiction again. Then I was sober for 3 years. Then I went back to cocaine addiction, alcohol. And
Well,
then
how old are you?
I'm 40 actually.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you spent your 20s in addiction then.
I basically I lived out a lot of years of my life being addicted to something.
When you
Um,
were 16, when you moved out, you said?
yeah, true.
And when you're 16, are you already experimenting with coke or are you still just smoking weed?
Well, my first boyfriend was a coke dealer, so yeah,
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen.
he was my first pimp. So I have a big story. So
Well, let's hear it.
I've worked in prostitution for a long time as well. I also had a lot of regular jobs, and I've managed to do without that for a long time. But yeah, my first boyfriend when I was 16, he actually got me into sex work for a long time, and
Now,
then
that's is that legal over there? Because like you hear stories about the red light district.
yeah, there's a red light district. It's legalized here, but the way I was doing it or he was doing it, it's not very legal, because where sex work is legal, pimping is highly illegal and can be prosecuted. So
It's the same in Canada, the same exact way. I had a girl from Canada on my show, and she talked about how it was legal to be a prostitute, but she ended up going to jail for human trafficking
yeah,
because her and her friend, they would drive each other to, for sex work,
yeah.
and they got pulled over, and they both got charged with trafficking each other
Oh
just
wow.
because they were driving each other to meet with people.
Yeah,
And they ended up getting the charges dropped because they were just trying to protect each other and look out for each other, because it's a very dangerous thing to be. It's anywhere in the world is a dangerous thing.
that's true. Yeah, yeah. Here it's the same thing. The red light district is known for sex work. It's legalized, but it's still a very risky business. Like I haven't worked in sex work for a couple of years now. I'm actually now working towards like being a social worker for sex workers. So that's actually my mission now, is to try and help the sex workers if they want to step out of the business, to try to get them out of it, to have other job opportunities, to see if they need any help in that. It's mental support and everything. So using my experience that I have many years to help them out. So yeah.
So I have a question,
Sure.
and you had said when we were messaging, you're actually trans,
Yes, I am.
which you're very passing, so I'll give you that.
Thank you very
Um,
much.
when did you realize that you were not a guy and you were a girl?
So actually, that started off very young, because to go back to my origin story, basically, I
Yeah.
was adopted. So as I said, my mom, she was addicted to substances, and she was working as a sex worker, which basically made her not being able to take care of me. And for the record, I know my real mom. We have a good relationship. But I got into the adoption care system and got into a family. There were at a young age, they felt like something was off with me, because I was very feminine. I have pictures where I was like very girly, very very high femme basically. And they actually had some assessments done with a psychologist and psychiatrist, where the results were actually being like, either he's going to be very gay or he's going to be transgender. And so the idea was for my foster parents, for me being transgender, was that couldn't happen because they were very conservative. So they did everything in their power not to have me develop as a transgender person. So in later stages in my life, I just felt like out of tune with everything. Like being in the straight community, I didn't feel like I had a place there. Being in the gay community, I didn't feel like I was one of the gays. And then at one point, I had a relationship. When that ended, I just felt in like this depression and everything until I met a girl named Emily, and she was transgender, and she kind of opened my eyes and showed me like what I was feeling. And then I started at the age of 26 to trans, which is almost, well, it's 14 years now. Yeah.
And it's that big aha moment where you're like, "That's what I am. Now I see my path."
Yeah, well, it's kind of like, you always felt like I knew the existence of it, but I couldn't like make the connection towards what was wrong with me. And I did drag and I did shows, and that was kind of like feeling in my element, and it still just never hit, and it just never felt like, oh, that's me. And I saw other trans women, but it just never felt like, it was just never hitting basically until that moment when I've met somebody and we started talking, and she really listened and basically showed me like maybe that's what is with you. And yeah, at
That's
one make a decision, and actually it developed into who I am today.
That's awesome to hear. Because I can only imagine it's like feeling trapped the entire time and really unsure of everything about yourself. I had my friend on here, she transitioned when she was 38,
Okay.
and it wasn't until she met somebody trans, actually around the same time, around 2010. She had
Mm-hmm.
met somebody that was trans, and finally she went, that's me. Now I get it. That's what I'm supposed to be.
Yeah,
And she was
exactly.
already married to a woman, had kids, as a man, and the kids were fully grown, and she was like, "No, I'm not." You know what I mean? She was a late bloomer. And how is it over there, the community? Because it's such a hot button issue in America. How is that community over in Netherlands?
So we do have, I think it's a better accepted, I think, situation here in the Netherlands. There's still, you still have, I think it's going backwards a little bit in a certain way because of social media and the exposure that it's getting nowadays. But in general, it's still a lot safer than I think than it is in America, which is sad because yeah, we should just be who we want to be. But overall, I feel maybe I'm just blessed in a way that I don't see a lot of bad things happening. Like as I can quote to you, I'm quite passable. I'm small. I'm not like 6 foot something, and I don't have massive hands, and I just go by my day. I mean, I am recognized also because of my past and my work past. People still recognize me, but in general, I'm being left alone in most of the times. So for me personally, I'm pretty okay. I live my life quietly, and I don't have a lot of issues, but I know there are others that have more issues depending on where they're living, because some areas aren't as safe. And then if you're more, if you're a little bit more masculine, that's also a little bit more difficult, which sucks, of course, for them.
Which
So
that makes me wonder, this. So you were 26 when you started transitioning. However, you started sex work at 16, 18 years old when
yeah,
you were a man.
yeah, that's true. That was the first time I started sex work, and then I stopped in the between. Then when I started transitioning, I found it very hard because this was back in the day, 14 years ago, and it doesn't seem like a long time, but 14 years is quite some time now. Where if I wanted to get a job as a transgender woman 14 years ago, I would was highly discriminated on, stigma. It it's changing now, but it wasn't changing that much back then. So I would apply for jobs and they wouldn't hire me because, I was just starting out as a trans woman, dressing the part, but not fully developed yet and everything, and not being taken seriously. So at one point, I had to make a decision like being broke, about to lose your house and stuff like that, or trying to make money. And I did stupid stuff because at one point, I was a drug dealer, but I sucked so bad at it. I mean, I kept losing my stuff because half of it I started using up, and the other half, I mean, I tried to deal in clubs, and the ecstasy pills would just fall on the floor, and I did some stupid things, and I'm like, okay, this is not it.
I am not a drug dealer.
I am not dope. And then I met one of my exes, and he said, "Well, why don't?" He was a masseur and erotic masseur, and then he said, "Why don't you try to do that?" And then
But
because
what is that? What is an erotic masseur?
happy ending masseur for gay men, and then
Massage. Okay, so it's massages.
yeah, a massage is. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm just trying to figure
Sure,
out word for word. I know that there's some things that because English is it's it. I don't know your language, but
that's okay.
you understand my language,
Yeah.
which I appreciate on your end of it because English is one of the hardest languages to learn. Apparently,
Well, no, it's not that hard for me, at least. It isn't. But thank
when
you.
did you
And
start speaking English?
huh?
When did you start speaking English, or is it something that you always?
At a very young age, actually. I have a thing for languages. I speak multiple languages, so it's
What else
pink,
do you speak?
I guess. I
What
speak
else?
German, English, French, English and Spanish and Dutch. So,
Isn't German like really hard to learn?
I had it in school, and it's quite similar to Dutch. It's
Yeah,
not as similar, but it's quite similar. So, it's one of my least favorite languages. But if I go to Germany, it's kind of like quite easy. I can make myself understandable. So,
I love Germany. That was a really cool country. We had when I was a kid, we had an exchange student live with us, and she was from Osnabrück, Germany.
mhm.
Um, and when we went to Germany to visit, she lives in Berlin now. So she usually visited us in the States, but this
Yeah.
was our first time getting to visit her in Germany. So
Mhm.
that's like the reason we went to Berlin was to see, my kind of sister.
Yeah.
Because I was 9 when she was 18 and she was living with us for her senior year of high school. And I was like in 3rd grade at the time. So, she was there for like a year and a half. And so it was really cool to get to see her in Berlin, go to like Oktoberfest where they had the big things of beer when they carry them all out at once and they carry like 6 at a time, all that crazy shit. Um, and I went to Cologne, Germany, and I can't say anything good about Cologne. That
No.
was
Why is
it just it felt so like a dangerous city in comparison to Berlin. I don't know what it was, but I felt like I had to be on my guard as opposed to Berlin. I felt a lot more free,
yeah.
and I felt that way about Ghent in Belgium. I loved Ghent. Like if my dad and I always said we would like if we had to leave the country and hide away somewhere, we were gonna hide in Ghent. And have you been there?
Yes, I actually lived there for 6 months, so it's a
Oh
very nice.
shit!
Yeah.
Yeah, we went to that bar where you take your shoe off.
Huh?
You know that bar where you have to like take your shoe off at the door in order to get like the big yard thing of beer. You
No,
had
it
to yeah.
sounds like fun though, but yeah, not anymore. But
Yeah, can't do that anymore. But
nope.
yeah, Ghent was a really cool city. The cobblestone roads and the cool bridges, and they have that castle there that we did a tour of. I got it. I bought a wallet there, and I still have the wallet to this day.
That's nice.
And it's funny. It's got like the European coin patch on it. Like the wallet has a coin purse because the euro has a lot of coins.
Yeah.
And now I use it for my AA coins.
Well, that's cool.
So
Yeah.
it's getting some use still. All right, so we're bouncing around, which is fine with me. So
And yeah.
When you're
Back,
16, what's that?
back to the story. Where were we?
So when you were 16, when did you discover Coke?
So basically with my first boyfriend, I left home when I was 16. Like, I was kind of like a rebellious kid, and I got into a lot of trouble. Then I just wanted to leave home. I moved out with one of my ex schoolmates, and I started working in like youth bars and everything. And then one night after work, I was super drunk, went to a bar where I met my first boyfriend, and well, thing led to another, and then I started doing coke, and I kind of like really liked it immediately. Like, it was kind of like one of those things that just hit, bam. I got into a relationship with him quite quickly, and it was one of those abusive, toxic relationships. But I was 16, naive, and highly influenceable. And
So if you're 16 when you discover cocaine, did you ever think to like, I was born addicted to speed in a sense? Like, did it ever cross your mind like, I don't want to do this because my mom did this and I don't want to know?
no, I wasn't thinking at all at the moment. To be honest, I was just out of the closet, like thinking I was gay because I thought I was a gay boy at the time, trying to find love. Like coming from a lot of abuse, and there's a whole backstory that I won't get into, but like I have PTSD from things that happened in my youth, like a lot of trauma. So leaving the house, with a lot of unresolved issues, a lot of shit in your brain, thinking you're just out of the closet and wanting to live life, being foolish. You just don't think, and like I
Yeah.
didn't think about anything. I just like, basically I just did this, woohoo, and let's go. And I started partying and drinking, and then he came, and that was it. And I moved to Amsterdam quite quickly. Moved in with him, and then the abuse started with him, and he beat me down. And then, if like a friend died, I went to the funeral. I got back, I was crying, and his solution was, "Oh, you're crying. Take a line of coke and shut up." Those were things that happened, and so I got heavily addicted. Then I got out of that relationship and got into another relationship with a guy, and he was addicted too. And so, it was just getting out of one vicious cycle, getting into another vicious cycle. And then getting out of that relationship that took me 7.5 years. That's when I found out being trans. And then I met my third partner, which I actually got clean with. But then I started doing sex work and traveling a lot because I went international. So I didn't actually, tackle my problems, didn't get into therapy. And so I started running from everything, traveling the world, still not resolving the issues basically. But traveling was a good solution, working, making money. So in a way, maybe I got addicted to the money and the sex work because, had all that. I didn't have that before. I didn't have a bad life, but I had that life.
Is that why you lived in Ghent? You were running?
Yeah, I was always on the run basically. And I lived for 6 months in Ghent. I lived for a couple of years in Antwerp. I lived in Brussels. Then I went to live in France for a year. Then I came back to the Netherlands, lived there for 2 years. Then I backpacked through Asia, throughout Asia for a year and a half. I lived in Australia for a year. Then I traveled in Asia another time. Then I came back to the Netherlands. My world came crashing down, basically.
You sound
That.
like me. I moved 30 times in my life.
And shake
So
hands.
yeah. And a lot of them were, I know you were moving country to country, but I was moving state to state.
Yeah.
So I've lived in 5 different states through my addiction because the problem is we move to get away from that life, and then you bring yourself with you and you don't actually go to therapy. You don't try anything different and you fall into the same kind of traps.
That's true. That's true. Like now I'm 40. I turned 40 in March this year, and this is actually the first time I finished, a program I got my first coin for a program, and it felt like I started crying and bawling my eyes out there, and I felt like I completed something. That's why now I'm also like, I'm on day 100. I'm counting every day, like, and it sucks sometimes that I feel like, when it's on my mind and I have to deal with those feelings, it sucks because I get kind of disappointed in myself for thinking about stuff. But then I deal with it and I talk about it, and then I just, put it to rest. And then, I find my ways to distract myself, and I talk to my therapist about it every day. I go to meetings. So I do the steps and I do everything. But still, I'm like, and very, I think, in a fragile state of mind still, but I'm pushing through. But it's the first time that I'm finally getting there, finally pushing through to these situations.
And you got a
How's
sponsor too?
huh?
You have a sponsor?
No, I just got back into the NA, so I'm just started doing going back to meetings again, trying to find a good sponsor. I've had a couple of sponsors, but they were kind of like disappointing. So, but like the connection wasn't there.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to
Sometimes you
find.
got to go through a few people to find the right one.
Yeah, I'm trying to find somebody who is experienced but has this kind of calmness and not judgmental person. And I'm not talking about me being trans or anything, but just, has a way, because I like somebody to have this kind of calmness and collectiveness, but still can be tough at times, but without telling me how to do things. I don't know how to explain it. And I've had those people, you need to do this, you need to do that. But then if I make a mistake, it's like, oh, burning me to the brit, burning me to the ground. And then I feel like even more shitty. So it's gonna take some time, and I'll get there with that. But I don't trust easily, and that's because of all the things that have happened. So I'll find somebody, and it's gonna take a little while. At the same time, I'm in my home now back again, so I'm gonna move one more time inside the city, because this place is not really my home anymore after having, like, so many experiences with using again. But yeah, I'm still doing everything that I can.
Yeah. No, I feel the same way. It's hard to live in a place that you got really high in.
Yeah.
You know, there's more triggers around you and more things that remind you of that lifestyle. And I mean, that's why I moved so much in my life, is because I was always running from that lifestyle. And then I kept bringing it with me anywhere. Anywhere I went, I kept bringing myself with me.
Though, yeah, I get that, but also there's one other thing. This area where I'm living in, especially the street, there's a lot of crack users here. So they're kind of incognito, but I know them. Not that I've sat with them, because I'm like, when I use, I'm alone. I isolate. So that's why I also feel like I need to move house, because it feels too much like that isolation here. But at the same time, if I go out, I get confronted with them too much. And I don't have any contacts, any dealers, everything. They're all gone. But then I see the neighbor and his dealer is in front of his house. And it doesn't make me want to use, but it feels like, it's still in your face. And I know
Yeah.
the guy, and every time I know when he's using, because it's always in my face. Like, and that's kind of like I need to just switch the environment, because, but I have the opportunity and it's coming. So
That's
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it is always tough to see people high and to not want that life for yourself anymore. It's
No.
almost like that reminder of who you were, and you're trying to avoid that now going forward.
Yeah, true. It's just like I don't want to think about those things anymore. Like, I fast forward the tape to, like, how my life would be if I ever use again, and it's not gonna look good. So I have that kind of, like, that handle to make sure that I'm not gonna use anymore. But like, I just don't want to be triggered anymore, and that's
Yeah.
the thing. Kind of hard, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't smoke weed anymore. There's something I quit when I quit benzos, like, like Valium and stuff like that. And I quit them a little over 4 months ago.
Mm,
And my wife has MS, and so she still smokes, but she doesn't like blow it in my face and do it around me and that kind of thing. But
Mm-hmm.
I know that it's here, but it doesn't like trigger me at all because it would be different if she was just like popping pills right in front of me, like, oh, these are your favorite pills. Like, she doesn't do that. So I'm lucky in the sense that I don't have to like be confronted with the drugs that I enjoyed. You know what I mean? Like,
So how long have you been clean for?
so I have many different recovery dates, right? I got 6 years from opiates. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I was addicted to oxycodone, like Percocet, 30 milligrams. I was addicted to them for 10 years or so,
Wow.
um, all my 20s and beginning of my 30s. And then I've been sober from alcohol 4.5 years at the end of the month. Will be
Okay.
4.5 years from alcohol. And then April 1st of this year is weed and benzos. So
Okay.
my dad passed away a little more than a year ago, and
Mm-hmm.
he passed away. I started smoking all day every day, so I
Okay.
wasn't using it as a medicine anymore. I was
No.
escaping with it, and then I got my psychiatrist to write me scripts for Ativan, and then eventually I told him I needed Valium, and he gave it to me, and it wasn't long before I started snorting my Valium instead of just taking it regularly. So I was abusing my own medications. So I had to tell him no more of those medicines. You know what I mean? Like, completely cut myself off from any kind of benzos, whether it's Xanax, Valium, Ativan, Klonopin. I'm not taking any of them anymore, and no more weed.
Yeah.
So it's been kind of affecting my sleep. Um, I have chronic insomnia, and
Okay.
so it's hard for me to sleep. It's hard for me to fall asleep. Once I
Yeah.
fall asleep, I stay asleep most of the time, but it's hard for me to like fall asleep.
Yeah.
And but it is what it is. I try going to bed earlier. This way, I can fall asleep earlier. Like, I'll get in bed at 8 o'clock at night, uh,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't fall asleep until like 11.
Oh wow.
So I'll get in bed at like 8 and then kind of watch TV or lay there, scroll my phone, and I'll finally fall asleep around 10:30, 11 usually.
Yeah.
And I'm up at 6:30 for work.
Oh wow.
So I get 8 hours more than that, more so.
Well,
But
that's good actually. But
yeah,
yeah, really adjust your whole schedule. Like me, if I want to go to sleep, it's like I get to bed and I get knocked out immediately. But because of my PTSD, like I have a medication called topiramat. I don't know what it's topiramat. I don't know what it's the English name topiramat. I guess. So that actually is it's an anti-epilepticum. So it makes you not dream or doesn't it makes you not have any nightmares. And that's actually what makes me sleep all through the night. So I do have the occasional dream, but nightmares are very, very, very sporadic. Which it's been a lifesaver because now actually I went down like in the clinic. I went down on my medication, trying to lower my dosage to go to zero. After 2 weeks, the nightmare started to come back, and all my triggers went off. We started talking about because you have relapse prevention training, and then we started talking about your drug of choice, and they crack and everything. They just name it by the name, and my body just started responding to it, and like everything just went off. And I didn't have that sensation for quite some time actually, and I got so annoyed. It took me like 15 to 20 minutes before I just really started to go down on it, but it dragged me throughout the whole day. As to now, where I'm back to my normal dosage, it's 75 milligrams a day. Like I can get triggered, but I think about it. nothing really goes off in my body because I have a good night's sleep. Sometimes I do feel it because I'm little bit more agitated, but I can manage it, you know. So it's like I can think about it. Sometimes I have to fight it a little bit, but then I can place it and it goes away easier. So it's been a lifesaver for me. But that's what you get when you have like you really traumas and everything.
How long
So
have you been on that?
since let me check. I think beginning of this year. Yeah.
That's a long time to go with nightmares.
Well, the nightmares have been actually one of the reasons why I've been on drugs for such a long time. Because one of the things when I'm sober or when I was sober is, I didn't sleep well, very short amounts of sleep, very busy in my sleep, a lot of nightmares that I suppressed with using. Actually, there was a time before crack I was actually on crystal meth as well. So that was, and I didn't sleep for 4 days, and then crashed, had a very deep, heavy sleep, and then the whole cycle would start again because I was actually scared of sleeping. So, you
Which is
know,
understandable.
yeah, but also a lot of things happened, and I won't get into it because the world is a wicked place. Let's just say that. Yeah, but now I'm doing pretty well. I'm actually getting another. Well, I won't. I'm not sure if I'm gonna have to do another treatment like in a facility or anything, but I'm waiting on at least 6 months of sobriety, and then afterwards maybe I'm talking about another, trauma therapy treatment where we can see if we can start going down on medication again, so I can really get into deep like EMDR or something like that.
Yep. I was just gonna say MDR.
Yeah, so to treat my traumas. But right now, I'm just happily comfortable with where I'm at, that I can finally fight my addictions. Because if you look at it from 16 to 40, minus 3 years is like 21 years of addiction. Well,
Now, what drove you to those? What was the reason you got clean for 3 years?
like I said, I had a pretty good relationship with a Latin American guy. We started traveling, doing the sex work. So I was escaping still, but not with substances. Like we traveled in Europe a lot. And then we settled down for 2 years in the Netherlands. But I was constantly traveling for work, going to Finland, going to Germany, going to the UK, going to Norway, traveling around in the Netherlands, working all the time. So,
Is that working as in sex work?
yeah. So making money was basically, working, making money, working, making money, and that was it. And then afterwards, we started traveling. Doing a big backpack travel, and then in certain countries we would stop, and I would start working there. So I
Now,
worked in.
were you already trans?
Yes,
Okay. And
yes,
like we talked
that
about, you're
that for women and trans actually in certain countries make more money than biological women.
yeah. I mean, like I think of Thailand is a big community for trans and the sex work.
Yeah, but then it's for Thai women. It's a lot of like if I would go there, I necessarily make a lot of money, especially if I'm used to certain rates or prices that I'm used to compared to, if you're from Thailand and you work for Thai rates. Not that it's not to how can I say this in a respectful way? Like if I worked in Dubai, I would work for 600 euros an hour. Do you know what I mean? And if I work in Thailand, I don't know what the ongoing rate is there, but it's a lot lower. And then I wouldn't work for the same rate because I'm used to working for a lot higher.
That makes
So
sense.
downgrading myself to a certain rate. Do you know what I mean?
No, that makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense.
And although I worked in sex work, I didn't work for any. any amount of money. I mean, I had a standard. Like in the Netherlands, I had a standard. In other countries, I had a standard rate, and I didn't like working for less. So, and at a certain point when I was addicted and working, because in the beginning of my sex work career, if you would call it that, I was doing work sober, and then to de-stress or to relax, basically in my free time, I would use drugs in the weekends or when I was not working. And then a lot of shit went down and happened, and then when I went back into sex work the second time around after so many years, I couldn't do it without drugs, and that's when everything started to really crumble, because although I made a lot of money, I also made stupid mistakes. And I'm lucky to never had an STD, never had any, venereal diseases or anything, or HIV. I'm very, very healthy, thank God. But it could have been different, and I could have been in very dangerous situations because I was high a lot of the times, and that's where I started to sell out, basically, because I had a standard and I started to go under my standards, and that's when you sell out for money or because you want money for drugs. And yeah, but that's been 3 years now, so
So you've been out of the sex work game since you were 37.
yeah, basically.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
that's good. That you're making that progress, and you're because that's almost an addiction in itself. Is making money is an addiction.
it is, actually it is. And sure, now I have a small amount of money a week that I live with, but I have other things that I can make some extra money with on a very legal and very normal way. But well, I'm actually happier than I was then. So money isn't everything, and people are always chasing and cloud chasing and everything, and trying to make as much money as possible. But I can concur, you're not going to get any happier with it, especially if you have to do a lot of things that aren't the best decision making things or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm happy to see where you're at. You know what I
Thank
mean? It's definitely not an easy road to be born addicted.
you.
And I'm glad you still have a relationship with your birth mom. Like, that's a really good thing because
Yeah.
not a lot of people can say that when they get adopted at a young age. Because you were adopted right away, I assume.
No, I was a year and a half old when I got taken away by my mom, from my mom, and then I was 2 years old or 2.5 years old when I was adopted. So, yeah,
Well, you're doing great.
thank you very much.
And it was
Hi.
a pleasure. What's that?
I'm trying very hard,
Yeah, no, I can tell between, trying to move and give yourself a new surrounding, give yourself a new mindset. You're 100 and so days in, recovery because I think you celebrate 100 days a couple of
uh,
days ago.
yeah, Sunday. So 103, actually 104, because 9 o'clock in the evening, it's like, the next day for me. So I'm actually at 104 now. So I'm very happy.
That's awesome. Yep.
Yeah,
And you're doing great. I appreciate you coming on and being so open and honest about your past. It's
thank you
never
for
an
having.
easy thing to revisit all that.
No, well, actually, it's been, I'm a very open and honest person about life, and I just came fresh out of the clinic where you have to write also about your life and life story. I've been thinking about really like getting into writing a book, and the thing is, if you're not open and honest about life or about yourself, then what can, I don't know how to say this, but that's where you get the most out of it, and that's
Yeah.
how you get the most out of it, is being open and honest about it, because lying and cheating and everything, that's what got a lot of people in problems in the first place.
Yeah, we
And
were talking about it earlier on another episode, how you have to almost be transparent about how you live your life in recovery because if you're hiding things and that means you're lying about things which can sit in the back of your mind, eat away at your conscience, And if you're just transparent, open, and honest, people can take you or leave you for how you are, but at least you're being your true, authentic self.
That's true. You know, right now it's kind of like difficult because I had to say goodbye to a lot of people and change my life around a bit because a lot of people here in Amsterdam are very much party set mindset, and they're still like thinking like, oh, she's gonna come back from the clinic and she's gonna be like, oh yeah, it was great and I feel so much better and it's just like a mental vacation and now we can just go on. But they don't get it that, like, I chose to go there to really actually change my life. you know uh, like one of the controversies is a lot of people think like just because I'm trans I'm not religious, but like me, I've always been religious, but now I'm like closer to my religion again. And then when I talk about that, for example, they're like, but you're trans, like I'm still able to go to church without burning the house down. God also accepts me. I read the Bible. It doesn't say that I can't go. But it's just these little things that they're like, oh yeah, now you've changed it to what, a holy one? No, it's just like I've always been there, but now just to stay clean and sober, I'm making actual changes. And you actually think that I'm just gonna come back and go continue to party again. So yeah, I'm just saying, like, it's hard to having to go through all these changes. And now it gets a little lonely at times because everybody is still in their party and drinking and doing drugs and I'm not. But also that'll change. And the last week has been very quiet and very lonely in home because everybody is there, still snorting coke and drinking their drinks, and I'm just sipping tea and water and eating my meals and just watching TV and being bored. But I'm just having to make some life choices. Guess.
Yeah, sometimes it's okay to be bored. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? You have to be able to sit in silence sometimes.
it's the quiet before the storm. That's what I always say.
Yep. Well,
Yes.
I'll let you go relax. Thank you again for being on the show and being so open and honest about your past.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I wish you
No
have
problem.
it is and have a nice day there or evening.
Yep.
I
Have a good night.
thank you. See
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.